Okay, everybody, welcome to this discussion on charity scams over the years. Everything elite Jews touch gets screwed up. If it's not screwed up already, they will see to it that it gets screwed up, and far more screwed up than it ever would have become on its own without their interference, right? And when it comes to charity organizations, there's certainly no exception here. They are, for the most part, absolute scams that have sucked billions upon billions of dollars out of millions upon millions of well-meaning people's pockets. And yet, most people still continue to support them, thinking that they exist to actually do some good, when that's almost never the case. And when it is, it's very minuscule. It's been said that even with the most honest of charitable organizations, if one can use that term in this context, only about 8 cents on the dollar at maximum actually goes to the people that the charity is supposed to help. At best. Sometimes not even that. But 8 cents on the dollar is the best that you can hope for with any mainstream charitable organization that's actually going to go to the people that need help. Let's examine some notable charities over the years to see just how untrustworthy they actually are, and to see who runs them, and thus who the scam artists actually are behind them, right? Well, you can already guess who they are. Before I even do that, though, let me make it clear I'm by no means attempting to discourage people from being charitable. All the more we should be charitable when we realize how scandalous these charity organizations are, right? That should encourage us to want to be more charitable, but to just be cautious as to where our charitable dollars go. We need to be sure that our money is going to people that are actually in need. How about going out there in the field, if you will, finding people who are in need and giving the money directly to them, rather than some third-party organization that's going to walk away pocketing almost all of it, in some cases, literally all of it. Let's start by looking at the ever-famous Live Aid and Band Aid charitable schemes back in the 80s, right? You guys remember those? Live Aid was a multi-venue concert that was held on July 13th, 1985. The event was organized by Bob Geldof, a Jew, of course, and Midge Uri, a non-Jew, to raise funds for relief of the ongoing Ethiopian famine, we were told, right? Billed as the Global Jukebox, the event was held simultaneously in Wembley Stadium in London, attended by 72,000 people, and the John F. Kennedy Stadium in Philadelphia, attended by about 99,000 people. Broadcast, telecast live around the world. On the same day, concerts inspired by the initiative occurred in other countries, such as Australia and Germany. It was one of the largest scale satellite link-ups and television broadcasts of all time. An estimated 2 billion viewers across 60 countries had watched the live broadcast. The concert was conceived as a follow-up to the earlier Geldof-Uri project the unsuccessful charity single, Do They Know It's Christmas? Remember that? Do They Know It's Christmas Time of Year? They've been playing that every year since on the radio at Christmas time, which was performed by a collection of British and Irish music acts billed as Band-Aid, and released the previous winter of 1984. The concert grew in scope as more acts were added on both sides of the Atlantic. As a charity fundraiser, the concert far exceeded its goals. On a television program in 2001, one of the organizers stated that while initially it had been hoped that Live Aid would raise £1 million with the help of the Wembley tickets costing $25 each, a pretty stiff amount for back then. The final figure was actually £150 million, approximately $283.6 million US dollars. Partly in recognition of the Live Aid effort, Geldof received an honorary knighthood. Oh, rah-rah. Music promoter Harvey Goldsmith was also instrumental in bringing the plans of Geldof and Yuri into fruition. Did you notice something about all of the coordinators of Live Aid? They were all elite Jews, every one of them. Now tell me something. Just how legitimate do you suppose a Gentile charity-raising enterprise raising millions of dollars could possibly have been when it was being run by elite Jews? Throughout the concerts, viewers were urged to donate money to the Live Aid cause. 300 phone lines were manned by the BBC so that the public could make donations using their credit cards during the live performances. The phone number and an address that viewers could send checks to were repeatedly aired every 20 minutes throughout the concert, right? Nearly 7 hours into the concert in London, Bob Geldof inquired how much money had been raised, and he was told £1.2 million. He said to have been sorely disappointed by the amount and had marched to the BBC commentary position. David Hepworth of the BBC, who later interviewed Geldof, had attempted to provide a list of addresses to which potential donations should be sent. Geldof interrupted him in mid-flow and shouted, quote, "F the address, let's get the numbers." He wanted big money to be raised. Why? Because he was concerned about helping people in the famine, or because he wanted to please investors and line his own pocket? It's passed into folklore that he yelled at the audience, "Give us your effing money," although Geldof has stated that this phrase was never uttered. After the outburst, donations increased to £300 per second. Later in the evening, following David Bowie's set, a video was aired showing surviving and diseased Ethiopian children set to the song Drive by the Cars, all designed to tug on people's heartstrings so they'd give more money. But again, you think it was out of concern for starving Ethiopians, really? The rate of giving became faster at this time in the immediate aftermath of this video, naturally, as was intended, right? Jewish Hollywood strikes again. Shameless manipulation of people's emotions just to suck money out of their pockets, not out of concern for starving people. Some might argue that this was okay, since it was supposed to be for a worthy cause, but was it? Did this money really go to starving people in Ethiopia and other African countries? Where did the money go? It's obvious that this charity wasn't intended to alleviate hunger in Africa. It did little, if anything, to alleviate the suffering of starving Africans. It's quite apparent that the Jewish coordinators personally pocketed a great deal of it, as is the case with every other such charity, right? It's always been the case. But here's an interesting revelation. In March of 2010, Martin Plott of the BBC reported that a large amount of the money that was raised was spent on weapons instead of food due to rebels posing as merchants, he said. He quoted people associated with the Tigrayan People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, who claimed that aid organizations such as the Relief Society of Tigray were used to funnel money to the rebels. How do you like that? He interviewed Gebremeddin Araya, who claimed that he posed as a merchant selling grain, got money from Christian Aid, and then gave it to the TPLF, the Liberation Front. Plott also interviewed Aragawi Burley, who claimed that the TPLF and the Allies, quote, fooled aid workers, and that large amounts of money were spent for weaponry and political activities. Plott also quoted a 1980s CIA report entitled Ethiopia, Political and Security Impact of the Drought, which claimed that aid money was being diverted to military uses. My. Perhaps this was the intent of the charity from the start. Who knows? In any case, this all occurred, after all, at the same time as the Iran-Contra affair. Oh, yes. Burry, who is or was a high-ranking TPLF commander living in exile in the Netherlands at the time, told Deutsche Welle that, quote, the rebel movement, TPFL, had received the money under false pretenses through its development arm, the so-called Aid Association of Tigray, or Maret, M-A-R-E-T. But Maret belonged to the party. So after the aid from donors and aid charities was collected, it was made available, he said, through the budget of the party's Central Committee for logistics and financing of the resistance. Geldof dismissed the claims, saying that, quote, the story and the figures just don't add up. It's his figures that didn't add up. So the whole thing was a fraud, folks. The money never went to starving Africans, maybe a very small percentage, but the bulk of it went to arms, and it looks like it was all part of the Iran-Contra fiasco. How about the Jerry Lewis Labor Day MD muscular dystrophy telethons, right? How about those? Jerry Lewis, after all, was Jewish, right? On May 20th, 2001, Jerry revealed his true colors in response to a CBS correspondent, Martha Teicher, however you pronounce that, who had asked him about protesters of his muscular dystrophy telethon, claimed that it exploited the handicapped. He barked in response, quote, "I'm telling people about a child in trouble. If it's pity, we'll get some money. If it's pity, we'll get some money. I'm just giving you facts. Pity?" he asks. "If you don't want to be pitied because you're a cripple in a wheelchair, stay in your home." This is what he told to one of the kids with muscular dystrophy, right? If you don't want to be pitied, stay in your wheelchair at home. I'm about pity because that's what raises money. Unbelievable. Did he really care about these handicapped children? Really? No. He exploited them so he could suck in big donations. And what did he do with those donations? Sure, a little bit went to handicapped kids. He had to make it look good, right? But guess what? Most of it went to him and his Jewish buddies. Every year he had those telethons, right? And now it emerges what a little scoundrel he was. Here he showed a complete and callous disregard for the people that he was supposed to be caring about and wanting to improve their lot in life over, right? Clearly, all he cared about was the money and playing on people's sympathy. And where exactly did that money go? After all the years, was there any progress over the years that he did those telethons? Any progress in dealing with muscular dystrophy? Was even one step forward made with all this money that was supposed to be not only to help the kids, but to assist in research to combat the disease, right? Was any progress made? None. Just like with the American Cancer Society, right? All the years, all the billions and billions of dollars collected primarily for research to combat the disease. Has even one step, as far as mainstream science goes and all the research money that was supposedly went into this, was any progress made? None. None. Not one step was made forward. Oh, independent researchers, right? Alternative researchers have made strides. But the system itself, with all this money, all this research that was supposed to have been done, no progress at all. The same thing with Jerry Lewis's Muscular Dystrophy Fund. No progress at all because there was no research, folks. Anyway, Jerry Lewis, in case you didn't know, was a typical elitist, arrogant Jew piece of trash. He was praised constantly in the media, right, for his selfless dedication to helping poor handicapped children. Nothing could be further from the truth. Just look at some of the arrogant filth that had come out of his mouth over the years. Here's a few very revealing quotes from him. He once said, "A woman doing comedy doesn't offend me, but sets me back a bit. I, as a viewer, have trouble with it. I think of her as a producing machine that brings babies into the world." Imagine that. So he didn't care about women now, did he? He said he didn't like the idea of a woman comedian because their job is just to be a machine to bring babies into the world. That's literally what he said. What a whack job, man. Once again, look how they put scumbags high up on a pedestal and have the public singing their praises, and yet people who are decent, who deserve recognition, get kicked in the dust every time, right? Here's another quote from this loser. People hate me because I am a multifaceted, talented, wealthy, internationally famous genius. Wow. Wow. Can you say arrogant Jew bastard? Listen to this garbage, man. And again, he's been praised in the Jew media as some great hero, right? What a narcissistic pig. How could anyone have trusted a charity that this scoundrel represented, right? The truth is, we shouldn't be surprised to discover that Lewis wasn't quite so concerned about handicapped children with muscular dystrophy or otherwise, since he never cared about his own children, as it turns out. In late October of 2009, Lewis's youngest son, Joseph Lewis, died of a drug overdose in St. George, Utah. There was no announcement made by Jerry Lewis regarding the passing of his son. Lewis disowned Joseph in 1989 after the younger Lewis told a tabloid that his father physically and mentally abused all of his kids on a routine basis. How do you like them apples? That story was not corroborated until December of 2009 when Gary Lewis was approached by a national magazine to verify the death of his youngest brother. In the resulting article, the eldest son of Jerry Lewis had spoken out angrily about his father's treatment of the 6 sons and did not refute any of the claims made by Joseph Lewis earlier on. To this day, until his dying day, Jerry Lewis had not publicly discussed the death of his son Joseph, and Gary Lewis claimed that he was never contacted by his father regarding Joseph's passing. Gary stated, quote, "Joe had problems his entire life, and I blame our father. Jerry Lewis is a mean and evil person. He was never loving and caring toward one of my brothers. I don't know if Joe's death is drug-related, but I believe that it could have been prevented if my father had been on better terms with him. I believe he partly died of a broken heart. My father doesn't really care. He's more worried about his career and his image than his own family." How do you like them apples? Let's move on now to some more charitable scams. How about the Red Cross? Over the years, so many scandals regarding the Red Cross have surfaced that only the dumbest among us would fail to see that this entire organization is in fact a fraud and is not worthy to receive anyone's financial support, right? Let's look at a few examples of the scandals of this organization that have surfaced over the years. There was the misappropriations of donations problem, for example. Every time that there's a major catastrophe, the Red Cross and similar organizations like the United Way have, gotten all the media attention, while other charities, smaller ones, are left in the shadows, right? They're always the ones in the fore, and that's the ones that get all the big money. This is not to say that the vast majority of Red Cross workers are not decent people who simply want to help those in need. You know, there are decent people in the organization. But what the media consistently has failed to report on in their promotion of organizations like this is that particularly the American Red Cross has been caught time and time again withholding money in the wake of horrible disasters that require immediate release of funds, right? It's kind of like FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, when in fact all they do is magnify the emergency. That's really what the acronym stands for, if you ask me. Federal Emergency Magnification Agency. Or, better yet, Federal Emergency Manufacturing Agency. They manufacture disasters and then magnify them when they show up to supposedly save the day. Oh, have they done that time and time again. They did it during the Hurricane Andrew fiasco. They did it during the Hurricane Katrina. I'll do a video on that sometime. Holy crap. Far more people died during that disaster because of FEMA than would have been the case from the storm alone, right? And on it goes. Every time FEMA shows up, run the other way. Don't ever think they're going to be there to help you. They're there to screw you. They're there to make sure you don't get help. They're not only not going to give it themselves, they thwart others from bringing help in. Trucks were lined up outside of New Orleans for 8 miles that had come from all over the country, bringing food, medicine, clothing, all kinds of supplies, medical supplies, everything. And they weren't allowed, I'm sorry, 8 miles. For 8 days, they were held at bay. But they did stretch for miles down the road, right? They weren't allowed in for 8 days. How many people do you suppose must have died? We'll never know. But surely a great many people died because of the lack of food and water and whatnot that wasn't allowed in. Disease spread rapidly. People were dehydrated, starving, whatever. FEMA. Yeah, they're there to manage the disaster, all right? To make sure that people don't get the help they need. Back to the Red Cross. The Red Cross, under the Liberty Fund, collected $564 million in donations after 9/11. Months after the event, the Red Cross had distributed only $154 million, again, out of 564, right? The Red Cross's explanation for keeping the majority of the money was that it would be used to help fight the war on terror. Really? That's not their goddamn job, is it? They're supposed to be a charitable organization. That was a lie, of course. It wasn't used to fight the war on terror. There was no war on terror. It was all fake, right? But nevertheless, even if there was, people didn't donate to the Red Cross for that money to be used to fight the war on terror. The money was given to help people in need, and the bastards withheld the vast bulk of it, right? To the victims, this meant that the money was going toward bombing third world countries like Afghanistan and setting up surveillance cameras and expanding the police state in U.S. cities, and not toward helping people in need to rebuild their lives, which is what, again, they gave that money for in the first place, right? Red Cross president at the time, Dr. Bernadine Healy, arrogantly responded when questioned about the withholding of funds, right, by stating, quote, "The Liberty Fund is a war fund. It has evolved into a war fund." Really? Says who? And how come the contributors weren't notified. They should have gotten their money back, right? When it was decided post de facto that the money was now going to be used as a war fund? Really? Did you know the Red Cross was using money donated for charitable purposes for a war fund declared after the contributions come in? Wow. After the devastating San Francisco earthquake in 1989, the Red Cross passed on only $10 million of the $50 million that had been raised and banked the rest. Donations after the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995 and the Red Cross River flooding in 1997 were also greedily withheld. Very little was distributed to those in need. Most of it was banked, right? The LA Times estimated that the Red Cross collected $7,000 per victim of the Katrina disaster in 2005, yet no victims had anywhere near that much spent on them after this storm. Where'd the money go? Well, we know where it didn't go. In 2005, 3,000 people died after thousands of Canadians were infected with HIV and hepatitis C from tainted blood supplies, right? The Canadian Red Cross pleaded guilty to the charges after they had been directly caught knowingly shipping out the infected blood. That infected blood came from the Red Cross, and they admitted that they knowingly distributed this. Freaking unbelievable, man. Every volunteer for the American Red Cross is required to sign an agreement that covers things like proper conduct and confidentiality, which includes a requirement for all volunteers to sign over all copyright, trademark, patent rights in any work-related writing, art, and inventions that are developed during their term, and for a full year thereafter. Imagine that. Why the hell does the Red Cross need to own copyrights for its volunteers, or copyrights at all? Isn't it obvious this is nothing but a money-making enterprise, which explains why only a small percentage of the funds ever goes to the things that people contribute for? Yeah, that's exactly why. Charitable, non-profit organization. Well, we know how that works, right? Non-profit. All that means is the agency itself cannot show any profits, but those who run it certainly can and do. And that's okay. It doesn't violate their non-profit status. Only the institution cannot show a profit, but those who run it can and do. Non-profit, my ass. The Red Cross president at any given time, whoever that may be, earns hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. Isn't that disgusting? Non-profit, right? On September 24th, 1998, CNN reported, quote, the Mexican Red Cross, regarded as one of the few bastions of moral integrity in Mexican public life, has slipped from its pedestal amid allegations of corruption from high-level officials who resigned en masse. It goes on to describe this major scandal that had broken out at the time in the Mexican Red Cross. It went on to say that 9 directors had recently stepped down, alleging, quote, abuse of power and financial irregularities under the organization's president, Jose Barroso. So again, financial scandals galore were going on in the Mexican Red Cross. They've gone on across the board with the Red Cross all around the world. The organization is a fraud and ever has been. And yet somehow people still give money to this and similar organizations like it. It's so disgusting. It's so pathetic. They not only are squandering the money, right? But they're not providing help. In fact, they're getting in the way of help. Look what they did with the tainted blood in Canada, right? They're not only not helping people, they're assisting in killing people. Can you guess why? It's the Jew factor once again, folks. That's always an ever prevalent problem, isn't it? For example, the American Red Cross was founded by its first president, Charles Barton, a Jew. Not so well known, but vital, was the role played by Adolphus Simeon Solomons, an American Jew whom Barton called her good vice president and kind counselor. With Barton, Solomons laid the foundations of America's leading humanitarian relief agency. A member of a long-established Sephardic family, Adolphus Solomons was a prominent businessman in Washington, D.C. So there you have it. How could the Red Cross be anything? How could it ever have been anything but corrupt and hungry for profits and power with that type of a background, with that type of a footing getting it started, right? On December 20th, 2005, Britain's express.co.uk website carried an article called Bono Charity Spends More on Wages Than Good Causes, which stated, quote, singer Bono's AIDS charity, Bono from, U2, is under fire for spending more on its staff's wages than it does on its own cause. Here we go again, more corruption, right? Because of the Jew factor, as always. According to a report in the U.S., the article went on to say, the global charity took in £9.6 million pounds in public donations in 2008, the latest year for which U.S. public tax records are available. A meager £118,000 was split between 3 charities, while more than £5 million was spent on executive and employee salaries. So there you go. And true to form, right? Like all these other charities, where the bulk of the funds goes into somebody's pocket or a group of executive people's pockets and doesn't go to the cause that the money is raised for in the first place, that people contribute for. Anyway, then there's the factor of disgustingly hypocritical appeals from former presidents for donations in the wake of major tragedies, right? For example, after the 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean, which was human orchestrated, if you can call those people humans. I'll do a video on that sometime. Yeah, the little high-tech toys were involved in that too. Very easy to do. It was an offshore earthquake that created this massive tsunami, and you can easily incite an earthquake, folks, using EMF radiation, electromagnetic, frequencies. That was admitted, by the way, by former Secretary of Defense William Cohen, right on the Pentagon's website, that they have, the technology. Back in 1997, he said, we have the technology whereby we can set off earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, remotely using EMF radiation, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely admitted documented right on the Pentagon's website, and yet so many people are still oblivious to it. In fact, so much so that they'll call you crazy when you talk about this, even though it's actually admitted. Anyway, so after the 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean, Bush Sr. and Bill Clinton both asked for contributions for relief, right? And then, in the wake of the 2010 Haitian earthquake, Clinton and Bush Jr. asked again for money, right? But where's this money going? What kind of real charity was involved here when we see how these Zio pig bastard run so-called charity organizations actually work? In reality, these disasters, again, were orchestrated by HAARP and other satellite-based technologies. But in any case, who would be gullible enough to donate anything that these monkeys were a party to, right? And yet, multiplied millions did in fact contribute on both of these occasions. People never learn, and that's why COVID took off the way it did. People don't pay attention to realize these scoundrels in three-piece suits who smile at you when the camera passes their way are liars, murderers, and thieves. Not so surprisingly, smaller charities that were involved with the 2004 tsunami relief project went public to say that large charities like the Red Cross and United Way were engaged in secret backroom negotiations with each other that meant that a large portion of the donation money was purposefully restricted from reaching the most needy areas affected by the disaster. The smaller charities were noting this and bringing it to the public's attention. After the Haitian quake, complaints were made that much needed help was not forthcoming. This remained the case for long after the disaster. The Red Cross, United Way were not coming through, even though they said that all this money had been raised and they promised to provide help. Never did it. Business as usual. Anyway, guys, a lot more could be said on the subject, but enough has been said, I hope, to make the point that if you want to give charitably, and I hope you do, I hope you will, but I hope you will give directly to people who are in need and not through a third party, especially a third party run by the hook-nosers. Thanks for joining me, folks. We'll catch you in the next video. Take care.